Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yervadi.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and I've got to thank Dr. ABC, for inviting me in the committee. She was one of my star students at TCOM. Very proud of her, and I've known her dad for a number of years. In 1995, when I came back to Texas, my partner left town. My first case all by myself was a lady that was like 70-some years old and in the 1950s had bilateral Hallstedian mastectomies with cobalt radiation. So, of course, they dissected her LAD. So who is my anesthesiologist but Dr. Klassen? So that was my first case I did with him, and I've gotten to know him better. And I'll tell you, he's really, done a lot to save me. All right, so thank you and for allowing a surgeon to come and talk at your convention. I want you to know I'm a little different than most cardiac surgeons, that I always appreciated my anesthesiologist. And it's more important now that you're a patient, I can assure you. So I'm glad I treated you guys good then, because people have treated me well back. So the objective is we're going to look at the psychosocial emotional transition from being a provider, then I became a caregiver, and then a patient. And I want you to obtain some knowledge about the barriers and what it's like to be on the other side of the fence. And I want to look at patient safety outcomes. I'm a certified professional patient safety, CPPS, by the Institute of Healthcare Improvement. I'm one of 20-some faculty at the university. We have a program. We're the only medical school in the country that are putting medical students through this rigorous certification course. We took 2 weeks out of surgery. They come through this extensive course and they take a certification exam. We're approaching almost 1,000 students. So we're trying to change kind of what it looks like, for our students. So only disclosure, my book royalties are for TCOM and Strathclyde Scholarship. I do have a lab supported by the Dallas Southwest Osteopathic Physicians. I have an endowment and run my research lab, and I'll share a little bit about that. I'm also a visiting professor at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, Scotland. I'm the first DO. It was founded in 1796 to be faculty. As a matter of fact, I'm pleased to say that November 1st, I'll be heading back, and on the recognition of the Senate and the principal advice, I will be receiving another doctor of science degree. So I'll be the first DO to ever get that. So I kid around with my students that I'm going to be a doctor to the third degree, or doctor. So very proud. This is the Royal Infirmary, very famous for Dr. Lister and also Dr. McGowan. And also there's some early anesthesia work that was done at this fine old institution there in Glasgow. When I was healthy, I was doing like half marathons and stuff like every other week or weekend. And in 2013, I did the Great Scottish Run. And there's all these people there, and I'm way back there somewhere, in that. But I finished it, and it was a really rewarding experience. I've been lucky that I have a good friend over there, a colleague, Terry Gurley. He's a professor there. He works with my lab. I go back and forth, and we really have done some translational work between the institutions, and it's been very rewarding. They also have a Rangers football club. We have Texas Rangers. They've got the Glasgow Rangers as far as English football. So they're really into that stuff. All right, so let's start this adventure. And this adventure starts way back in Allentown, PA, where I grew up. And Allentown was noted for Mack trucks and Bethlehem steel. Everything's gone down. It's gotten so debilitated. It's really depressed. But my dad worked there for many years, and I went to Catholic school there. And I kid around and I say I went with the Sisters of No Mercy. They told me I wasn't very smart. I may as well just stand on a street corner smoking cigarettes. Okay, so I did. And the good news is I worked in a pharmacy, and a pharmacist really kind of mentored me and said, you need to think about something better. You've got a lot more here. And so I joined the Army, went in the United States Army, and in 1973 at Fort Sam, I met someone that changed my life. At that time, the Department of Defense was disbanding the Women's Army Corps, and they were integrating into the regular Army. So I'm sitting down there in this basic medic course, and there's this beautiful blonde girl from California there The guys have manuals. They ran out of manuals for the women. She ripped it out of my hand because she was frustrated, and that was the end. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, we just had our 50th anniversary. And it's hard to believe a heart surgeon being married for the same wife for 50 years. I know that's hard to believe. But anyway, she's the one that changed and told me, thank you. Yeah, it's been an experience. But she's the one that changed and said, no. I said, what do you want to do? I go, oh, I think I'll stay in the Army 20 years, be a medic, whatever. She goes, no, you need to go to medical school. I go, I'm not very smart. I can't do that. She goes, if you don't do that, I won't marry you. Okay, so I did. And anyway, we went back to California. I finished my undergraduate. She finished her master's. And then we went off to TCOM. TCOM was a great experience, great institution. I became class president. We impeached our president. I became class president. Interesting class. So years later, then I did intern at Tulsa and general surgery. And what I liked about Tulsa, at the time, Tulsa had anesthesia residency, all the residencies. They did cardiac surgery there. So it was a great institution for me to go to. Then from there, I launched off back to New Jersey to the Deborah Heart and Lung Center. Little did I know that when I did basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, miles down the road was the Deborah Heart and Lung Center, and years later, I'd be there training as a heart surgeon. As a matter of fact, I tell a story that one of my patients when I was a resident was one of my former drill sergeants because many of them retired and stayed in the area. So fascinating how things kind of turn around. At Deborah, I did over 1,200 open hearts in 3 years. We were just like a machine putting out pediatric, adult, lung, and so forth. I did a stint over in Lithuania. We did a mission over there for a week of surgery. It was a great experience. And from there then, left and back. So I came back. I became initially private practice, but I really wanted academics. Went over to the university. I developed an ischemic reperfusion protocol, cardiac protection, shock, prolonged CPR, and brain protection device. You had a transplant here talking about that. We've rewritten the University of Wisconsin formula, and we're investigating getting kidneys on pump 96 hours by adding pyruvate as an intermediate in metabolism. So my colleague Bob Mallett and I probably have about 20 years of publication research of using pyruvate as a substrate. So it was a great experience. One of the things we did for our 40th anniversary, we went to Bora Bora. So if any of you can do it, spend the money. It was unbelievable. As a matter of fact, she said, I've never seen you so relaxed. It was just a wonderful experience. So we came back from that, and then Sharon had painless hematuria, and she was diagnosed with urachal adenocarcinoma. One in like 5 million, very rare. No one survives. She underwent a robotic partial cystectomy. And I said, you've been working forever as a dietitian, time for you to retire, and let's enjoy life. So here's her slide, which is a stage 3A. However, she's doing good. She's like 9 years out now, survivor. So the 5-year survival is only like 40-some%. So we've kind of beat the odds on that and thought, wow, we're okay on this. So she retired. She became an author, and she's now a survivor. So she started writing books. And I'm told they're paranormal romance. I call them dirty books, and I get in trouble from her. So she was on the 4th, working on the 5th book, and unfortunately, something happened. What happened was we were down in kind of the South Caribbean for a trip, vacation, and when we come back, she had suffered a massive CVA. And what I did, I usually wake up at like 3 a.m, go to the gym to work out, and she was obtunded and everything. I said, holy, you're having a stroke. So I call the EMS. They come, City of Southlake. The closest center is Baylor Medical Center in Grapevine. I said, no, you're going to Medical City, Fort Worth. I'm on staff there. They have an NIH stroke protocol. So the paramedics arguing with me, going, no, they need to go to the closest place, because I didn't know how long she was out or whatever. So he calls up his medical director and said, I've got this surgeon here who's really giving me a hard time, wants her to go to, he goes, what's his name? Gave my name. The medical director goes, whatever he wants to do. Turned out he's one of my former students. So we got her down there, and this is what they pulled out of her middle cerebral artery. So they reperfused her. Unfortunately, she took out Broca's, and it has extensive aphasia. The good news is she was left-handed, so a lot of motors intact and so forth, but it's really been hard on us. So that's my change. So now I became from this big provider, now I have to be a caregiver and take over everything. So here she is, looking pretty good at 72, still alive. But I had to take over everything. I didn't realize all the things that she had done all the years. One of the things about her, she was very frugal, very conservative. All my other friends were going on trips and vacations, and she wasn't. Little did I know, she was putting all this money away, saving for us so that we would have a retirement. And I was like in shock, and appreciative. So the next transition happened. I was lifting this tractor, and I had a back strain and a psoas tear and radiculopathy. I could hardly stand in the OR, hardly get to the car. So I got a CT MRI of my spine, and the radiologist came out, who I've known for like 15 years, and I said, Paul, how bad's the disc? He goes, dude, you got metastatic cancer. It's like, what? So here was my lumbar. My third lumbar was chewed up. I didn't know. I thought, I'm having low pain, running, this and that and everything. And I'll tell you what, I could hardly stand at the table, So here it is. I had multiple myeloma, and underwent a stabilization infusion. All right, that wasn't a fun surgery, I can assure you, but I got through that. The good news is I had the surgery done at a place where I had a cardiac OR room and a team. I knew all the anesthesia people. They took great care of me, and got me through this thing and the first surgery. So that was good. Then I was having a lot of radicular pain, and I was really in trouble. So luckily, I've got a good friend and colleague, your former president, Ash Klassen. So he put one of these devices in me, and it was incredible, kind of do it. I can tell when the battery goes down that I'm in trouble and recharge, So he put that in, and that's been an interesting thing, really phenomenal. And I went on chemotherapy. It was a multi-drug. It was a monoclonal antibody. Revlimid is a thalidomide derivative, and steroids. So now I'm getting massive amounts of steroids. Now I'm on this freaking steroid high. And I've always been an overachiever, and I always swear my adrenal glands are the size of apples. I mean, they're just sucking up this steroid, and I couldn't sleep. So I got Stemhell Harvard. I've got 2 aliquots at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. We did that. Of course, being an underachiever, I can't tell you how many, 2 aliquots I did of cells. So things are kind of moving along. All of a sudden, I woke up one morning and I had pain in my hand. It was white. I called one of my colleagues, and anyway, had axillary artery thrombosis. So they tried to do a thrombectomy, and that didn't go very well. Trying to do a lysis. So I ended up going with an open thrombectomy. And how the story is, and this goes to show you when you treat anesthesia well. So my colleague was going to operate me the next morning. Well, later that afternoon, it was getting worse. I said, that's it. I called in the OR crew, anesthesia. Then I called him back and said, they're waiting for you in OR 1. Get in here. And so we went to surgery that night and fished out the clot. Unfortunately, where the femoral oclusion device was, that plug went south and knocked off my tibial-peroneal trunk. So I had to have another surgery and get an open thrombectomy. By then, my freaking leg is like blown up like a balloon, and I'm thinking, this is horrible. So one of the first medical errors was, and we did a lot of work in our lab on ischemic reperfusion, is a lot of water and filling of fluid. No one elevated my leg. So post out that thing blew up like a balloon. So I'm having the nurses put it on pillows high. I'm ready to do my own fasciotomy at the bedside because I'm like freaking scared I'm going to lose my leg, and got through it. It took months to get that down. But why I bring that point is it's those simple things. Elevate the extremity after reperfusion. Makes sense. These simple things is what gets you in trouble. So anyway, there was the occlusion. We finally got it open, and I still have 2 legs. They sort of work, but I'm here. All right, so open embolectomy is what they did. So then I got superficial phlebitis, and let me tell you, that's the worst thing. You get out of bed, and now the venous bed fills up, and you're like in excruciating pain. And I'm thinking, oh, do I have another DVT? What have I got? But I knew the diagnosis and kind of got through it. but like, oh, one thing after another. All right. Then I developed atrial fib. So I'd go to the ER, heart rate would be like 180, 200. I'd get cardioverted. On my way home, which is like 20 miles, I'd go back in AFib. Well, it happened a couple times and decided, you know what, let's quit fooling around and let's go for an ablation. So I got a complex ablation. And again, knowing people, the interventional cardiologist, we did it on a holiday weekend, happened to be, and he spent hours mapping out, and I've been in sinus ever since. So let me tell you, it's not a good feeling to be an AFib with a rapid ventricular response. You just don't feel very good. All right. Then here's my ischemic right foot. Finally got through that, and things get better. No, they don't. Now I'm having a lot more pain and so forth. So I had to go back for a second surgery, a 360. And then I had implanted my L3. The 360 is a tough surgery. My cojones blew up like balloons. I had so much fluid, in my abdomen. It was horrible. It took me forever to get through this. I was incoherent in the ICU. I thought I was going to die, but I got through it. And between the stimulator, stabilizing the spine, and that everything was looking good. As a matter of fact, an interesting thing is my M spike, after we did the resection and took out the vertebral body, my M spike went to 0. I think there was still a nidus there, and it's been gone, so I can't prove it. But suddenly my numbers dropped. So this has been a remarkable thing going through. Then I got steroid-induced cataracts. All right, I couldn't see well. I told my dean, who's my PCP, I said, "Do you think it's the lisinopril you prescribed for me? I'm having a lot of cloudiness at night and stuff." He goes, "You dumbass, what's wrong? Did you not go to school? Didn't you listen?" He goes, "You got cataracts." Sure enough, got it done and done well with that. Well, it never ends. I was on a lot of narcotics and stuff. And so Dr. Klassen saves me again, decides to put in a pain pump and implanted that. And that's been great. So it's on a basal rate, no narcotics, anything. I don't have to worry about it. It's really helped a lot with that lower stuff, So I'm thinking, okay, here we are. We're about done. No, we're not. Then I got steroid-induced avascular necrosis of my humeral heads, and I have to have bilateral shoulder surgery. But being a physician, what happens? They both failed. Had to go back for revisions a second time. And I said, I'm not going back a third time. That's it, So I've got some decreased range of motion, but still going. It was an interesting surgery going through that. And that's where some of the stuff begins that's scary. They failed to administer stress steroids. Now, I'd been on steroids for 3 years. I guarantee you every osteopathic anesthesiologist in this room knows to do that. These MDs weren't very smart. Okay? I was at a different institution. I had no control. So I come out, and I'm hypoaldo. I get electrolyte imbalance. I'm hyponatremic. My sodium goes to like 115. I'm like out of it. Trying to figure out what the hell is going on, being confused, trying to tell people what I need done. I said, I need saline. I need this. I need steroids, trying to do that. So, of course, that extends my length of stay. Then, the light cord came out of the wall. I was 4 hours. Nobody, couldn't get anybody. So finally I figured out, let me stand up. That'll set off an alarm. And I start screaming in the hall, and I got everybody's attention. So I go. Well, it turned out the surgeon discharged me, but the hospital is canceled. They thought I was gone. So here I am from 10 to 4 p.m., no one checking on me, no vitals, no pain meds, in the hospital. Major error, okay? Next thing that happened is the nurse scanned my barcode and didn't ask and gave me a big bolus of morphine. And he was pissed off at me because my IV infiltrated. He tried to dick around to fix it. I pulled it out. And he got mad at me because I didn't want phlebitis. Well, he had to wait for another nurse to do it because I don't think he was very competent. So he flushes this morphine, and I looked at the bottle. Luckily, their respiratory therapist came in, or I don't think I'd be here talking to you guys. All right? So another major thing. Now imagine you're the physician. You know what's going on, but imagine if you're not. You're some person with no medical knowledge. You have no clue what's going on to you. What a scary feeling. It's no wonder that we haven't impacted when you look at death rate in hospital. The most reliable organizations are NASA, okay, aviation, and nuclear industry. They're over here. When you look at Six Sigma, medicine's over here. As a matter of fact, wrong side surgery, orthopedics and neurosurgery, urology is still high in this country. We haven't impacted that. And all the things we do for pre-op and everything, marking, and there's still errors, okay? Scary. All right, so then I had major bruising from all the sticks. I had a port, but they wouldn't use it because it was close to the incision, they said. And it's like, I've done that before. You drape it out and everything, but I couldn't convince them. So, man, I'm like all chewed up and everything from IVs and things. And here I've got a working port. They could have just used, and saved all that. So got through that. All right, so I talked about that, hyponatremic. Nephrology was consulted. This is really cool. It got entered into the computer, but someone didn't hit the button to activate it. So I kept saying, where's the nephrology? Well, he's in the office. He's in the office. It's getting later and later. It's like, wait a minute. He'll see you in the morning. I said, I don't think so. And by then my sodium was going down. I said, I want to be transferred out of this hospital. Well, immediately then they got someone to see me. His nurse practitioner came in. What did they do? They started some saline on me. I got some steroids. I started coming back to life. So, of course, in 24 hours, I'm wanting to get out of there, And, they wouldn't let me out for a while. But I think it's important that, when you look at this, all these things that can happen to you, as a patient. So I want you to be cognizant of that and think about that. And I tell my students also, it's very important that we all work as a team. Anesthesia, surgery. I never believed about the blood-brain barrier thing, I always felt that we needed to communicate. And I always felt that if there's a complication or problem, what's the first thing we do? We blame anesthesia, okay? I never did. I took responsibility. I told my residents, you're responsible, okay? They're there to help you. You're the one that put the big hole in the aorta, not the anesthesiologist, okay? You're the one that ripped up the pulmonary vessel, not the anesthesiologist. They're trying to do their best for you. Or the other thing is, the residents would get frustrated where anesthesia would delay, okay? And I have a term called UDET, but I got to be careful on using the acronyms. Usually anesthesia around, anyway, taking time and holding cases. And the residents would get frustrated and push. And I said, look, stop. They're doing what's right. Okay, they're doing what's right for this patient, because our job in the end is to have a very positive outcome. And I tell my students, think about this. A husband and wife married 40 years, they go to the hospital, husband's going to undergo heart surgery. Now someone comes out and says, Mrs. So-and-so, I'm very sorry, your husband's not going to get off the heart-lung machine and survive. And now she goes home to an empty house. And when you go back and look at it, there's some errors that occurred within surgery that maybe could have been avoidable. And I really try and express that with my students. And their eyes get very, very big, because no one's really doing that to give that humanistic thing for students. Okay, I've always felt that's important, okay, on that. So I'm very proud, part of that. Now, current status, here we are. This was the Osteobreakers, 1982 at TCOM. The guy in the back is A. Ray Lewis. The guy in the middle is Paul Saints, who is the team physician for the San Antonio Spurs. And up front is Hyper Al. Okay, and we did a Michael Jackson thing at this thing. It was fun. Oh, here we are. So I'm out here right now. Everything's looking pretty good, as far as where I am. My markers are down. My labs look pretty decent. I've been fighting with some anemia, getting some infusions, because of my bone marrow and so forth on that. So I retired for a month. State of Texas requires as faculty, you leave a month and then you can come back part-time. So luckily I came back. I got hired by my chair to take back over med ed and health system. I'm the surgery clerkship director, and there's some students that are not very happy when I call them to my office because they've been acting up, okay? But I have a research lab with a DO PhD student and other students. So very happy on that. There was a talk here about renal perfusion. We developed this solution, redid it. We're taking the kidneys, we're putting them on pump. 96 hours, look at histology. And it's looking very good that we may be able to extend out preservation, for these kidneys. We did some of the same work with ischemic reperfusion for tourniquet limb for the Department of Defense and saving limb salvage. And then we did an interesting case of ischemic cerebral occluding the internal carotid artery and reperfusing. And we were the first lab to show we could upregulate erythropoietin within the brain itself as a neuroprotective mechanism. And we published that in Stroke. That was a pretty landmark paper that we did. So this kind of stuff, keeps me going. I do have an endowed professorship, Joe Lamanna and his board. There was a hospital in Dallas called, and I can't remember, Stevens Park Osteopathic Hospital. They closed. They put all their money into like endowments and things on that. So they're the ones that are, funding our lab. Because, each pig is about $400 for a pig, not counting all the other stuff to do the experiments and so forth. So I continue to do that. I'm involved with a lot of different things. I was telling someone here, I signed off about 6 or 7 letters for students who wanted to go to anesthesia conference or join anesthesia organizations as students. So we have probably about, I would say 4 to 6 students go into anesthesia, about 6 to 8 go into surgery. Certainly most of them go into primary care, family medicine, internal medicine, et cetera. But we do have some that are interested. So where do you go? You put everything in order. You pay for your house. You find your hobby and philanthropy. Now, I couldn't sleep. I always talk about writing a book. And I thought, let me write a book about what it takes to become a heart surgeon. And then I said, you know what? Let me just talk about my life. So I published the first book, What My Hands, that goes from grade school all the way through everything that's happened. And then, I wrote a second book, this to me, that continues the story. I put in there interesting cases I did, thinking out of the box and so forth. And currently, there we go. I'm on the 3rd book, and I'm not quite done. Probably another couple chapters to go on that one, and that'll finish the series. And then I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to write a book called Bride and Blades, How to Survive a Surgical Marriage, and give us some advice to young residents and how to survive and keep your first wife. It's a lot cheaper, I can tell you, that. So anyway, everything goes. I've had a blep for cranial nerve palsy, shoulders, had phlegmons in my hands, where I had IDs and stuff. And I kid around being Catholic. I've got stigmata now where I was crucified on both hands because we're not sure where the infection came. It was an unusual bug, but man, my hand blew up like a balloon. As a matter of fact, the second time it happened on the other hand, I got one of the orthopedic guys. We're in, our Academy of Medical Educators. We're in the library, and I bring supplies, and we did an IND in the library to drain this thing, to get through it. But anyway, you got to stay focused, resiliency, look at family, friends, and colleagues for your support, because that's extremely important. So I always talk about the fates. Those are the ones that, cut the cord, do the stuff. Even Zeus was afraid of the fates, and they keep coming back at me. As a matter of fact, in my first book, I named 3 of the nuns that used to hate me. They're one of the 3 fates, in there. So anyway, so we continue to go along. I've been to London, LA. I'm going to go to Miami book signing. I was supposed to go to middle of Philippines this week, but couldn't coordinate it with this meeting. I felt this was an important meeting I didn't want to miss on that. So we're still going. I'm still alive. And really, I thank you for allowing me to share the story. And I hope it, tells you that certainly, we're vulnerable. And suddenly wake up one day and now you're a patient. And again, I can't say enough, and I appreciate my anesthesia colleagues for taking care of me, keep me alive, even though those guys forgot the steroids. It hasn't happened after that because I make sure. As a matter of fact, I had an outpatient TURP at a surgery center. This anesthesiologist was the most intense historian. He had a student with him. He went through everything. He had the pre-op steroid. He had the post-op steroids ready to go. It was the smoothest case. And I said to him, I said, "You're remarkable." He goes, "Yeah, but everyone doesn't like me because I'm too slow." I said, "Who cares?" I said, "You are the most thorough anesthesiologist I've ever had. You didn't just rely on the CRNA. You were there engaged, and I appreciate it." But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate you listening. And thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uravati, for that excellent presentation. Slew. Dr. Grace Liu graduated from Western University of Health Sciences in 1999, completed an anesthesiology residency at Riverside County Regional Medical Center, and pediatric anesthesia fellowship at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. She was on staff as a pediatric anesthesiologist with Southern California Permanente Medical Group for 18 years and is currently a per diem with SCPMG. She will be speaking on how to transition to your next chapter, a journey to part-time early retirement. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Liu.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for sticking till the very end. And Dr. Yavardi, I wish I had talked to you 20 years ago during the beginning of my career. Truly, truly inspirational story. Thank you. So when I was first approached by AOCA to talk about my topic, I thought I was going to talk to you about my personal strategic planning for early retirement, going part-time. But now I'm about a year and a half through my transition. I realized that this process is actually much, much more than just financial independence, going part-time. And that is actually much more than finding your purpose and meaning in life. And so through this talk, my objective will be hopefully to share my personal journey and the lessons that I've learned with you, the lessons that I've learned along the way. Some of these lessons were expected. Some of these lessons were completely surprising to me. And hopefully, when it's time for you to make that transition, whether it's early retirement or retirement completely or transitioning into a different career, or whenever you're ready to make your life transitions, hopefully some of the lessons that I've learned can help you when you're ready to embark on your own journey. So I have no financial disclosure. So the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, was made popular in the early 2000s, and it was fully embraced by many millennials. Now, I'm a Gen X, but I actually embraced this concept pretty early on in my career. I was a first generation Chinese immigrant. My parents taught me to work hard, save your money, put your money away for retirement. And then once you retire, you can enjoy your life. But that all changed overnight when I was an anesthesia resident in 2001, when I received a phone call that my dad had died of a massive heart attack. He was 64 years old. The same day that he found out that he was let go of a job of 20 years. And he was 1 month shy of his 65th projected retirement birthday. That was a pivotal moment in my life. I realized on that day that I was going to enjoy my life, I was going to work hard, I was going to achieve financial independence, and that I was going to retire as soon as possible. And that's what I did. So after my pediatric fellowship, I joined a big medical group. This medical group provided me with excellent retirement, excellent medical benefits. My schedules were good, my pays was pretty good, and I had a lot of leadership opportunities where I headed QI committees. I was the mentor for about 7 years to mentor the new physicians that joined that medical group. So I was offered a lot of different opportunities to grow my career. So for the next 20 years, that's what I did. I grew my career. I made sure I put money away for retirement. I worked hard, but I also always remember the lesson I learned from my dad. I also really entertained my passion, which at the time was traveling. So I haven't been to Bali yet, but I would love to. But I traveled the world, and I really, really felt that I'm the luckiest person in the world. I have my dream job, and was well on my way to achieve my own FIRE movement. But that all changed when COVID hit us. Like many of you, the days of taking care of dying COVID patients in the hospital were physically and mentally draining and tiring. And on the days that I was not working, I often found myself alone at home. Now I no longer have the distraction of going out with friends. I no longer have the distraction of traveling. Now, to keep myself from going absolutely insane, I had to find something else to do. So just like many of you, I know that a whole bunch of people picked up sourdough baking, I think. I can't do that. I'm a horrible baker, but I've always wanted to learn French. So online, I picked up French lessons. I've always wanted to play a musical instrument. So online, I learned how to play the guitar. And because all the restaurants were closed, I had to cook. And that was probably the most difficult task. But I did. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy gardening. I picked up reading again, which I didn't have time for. And one of the most surprising thing for me was that I actually didn't miss going out with friends. I actually did not miss traveling the world. That the simple things in life actually kept me just as happy. So that was kind of a little shift for me. Also, having all the time alone by myself really allowed me time to really just look within myself and who I am. Instead of Dr. Liu, I'm Grace. Who am I? Somebody has said, if you want to really look at your life, write your own eulogy. What do people want to know about you is how you want to live your life. So when I had that time alone, I started looking within myself. And what I realized that for me, that goal I set for me when I was in my early 20s to pursue medicine and retire early is no longer my goal. Instead of the FIRE movement that I knew, I really wanted to change my paradigm. I wanted to be financially intentional, meaning I want to intentionally make my money on my terms. I want to have the flexibility of do the things I love. And I also want to reinvent and reimagine my future going forward and to stay engaged. But being the type A personality that I am, of course I can't just do that. That would just be completely out of my character. So I had to really figure out financially, is it even possible for me? There's a lot of numbers on that slide. I'm definitely not a financial person. I would recommend you see maybe a CPA or a financial planner for the specifics in your situation. But I follow sort of a simple guideline just to get an idea of if I'm even on the right track. So this is called a final multiple, which basically give you an idea, how much money you should have saved, depending on the stages of your life. So I used it as a rough guideline. I also use the 80% rule for for those of you that are maybe approaching retirement, you will know that usually during retirement, they do project that your expenditures do go down. So I also follow that rule. I also had to really intentionally understand my financial situation. When I was working full-time, I never thought about money. So for the first time in my life, I had a budget. So what I did is I added up all my spending. And what was surprising to me is because of what my parents taught me, I've always been very intentional of my spending. But what I found out after I did all my math is actually I spent a lot more money than I expected. So that was a little bit of a shocker. But I knew that since I was already living well within my means, that I could make that adjustment easily. And also a lot of people recommend that you build a safety cushion. Whatever transition you decide to do, whether it's to take a sabbatical or going part-time or just, making any changes in your life, build a safety cushion. So I'm very conservative. So I build a 12-month safety cushion of the money that I know that I need, put in a liquid asset so that way you can access it if in case if you aren't able to work for about 6 to 12 months. After I did all my expenses, I realized, well, I really was not going to be able to retire early. I was 51 years old at the time, so I wasn't too heartbroken because I was really about 10 years before my original projection anyway. But what I realized is even though I couldn't retire early, but I could modify my schedule. So I realized that I could still work part-time as a per diem, still financially be okay, and then also that would give me time to pursue my other interests, my other passion outside of medicine. So I looked at all like I said, my organization gave a very good retirement. So I looked at my 401k, how much money I could draw from that. You may have other outside income streams, and you could look at the income that you can get from that. I also talked to a CPA, knowing that once your income drops, you might actually end up paying less taxes. So there are some tax ramifications as well. And I talked to a financial planner. Even after I did all the math, I have no financial background, so I wanted a financial professional to kind of give me the big picture. So I finally decided, okay, I'm gonna go part-time. Okay, so I started to share my plans with people around me. I started talking to my family first, then my friends and my colleagues. And most people were very, very encouraging. They were happy for me. But I also met a lot of skepticism, especially coming from my colleagues. Many of them are like wide-eyed. They stare at me. They're like, "Are you crazy? Are you being irrational? Why are you quitting your dream job?" Those comments definitely did not make my life easier at the time because I was already full of self-doubt, and I was really fearful of the uncertainty I was about to jump into. So through the recommendation of some people, I seek out people, physicians, non-physicians that have taken a non-traditional path. I talk to people that completely transitioned out of medicine into something else. I also talk to people that adopted a hybrid model of clinical medicine and academics. So that really gave me a peace of mind knowing that it's possible. And also a lot of online resources. There's actually a lot of podcasts, blogs shared by other physicians that have either modified their career or transition out of medicine completely, and that have a lot of ideas of what they are doing right now. So it also made me feel like I truly was not alone. I feel like kind of an oddity of thinking that I'm going down this wrong path, and I really was afraid to speak out loud about it. So looking online at these resources, it really gave me a space to express how I felt, so that I was really grateful for that. And really just completely serendipitously, I ran into a life coach. I didn't even know what a life coach until I met one. And this person actually gave me some really significant life-changing aha moments. So what I realized that for the majority of my life, I have operated on this fixed mindset. I knew I wanted to be a doctor. Doctor is the only path. I'm good at it, but that's all I know. And also, medicine has offered me such an amazing life. I was able to enjoy myself and all the decisions that I made. If I were to deviate from that path, make a mistake, I am at a risk of losing it all. And worst of all, if I try something new, I failed, I might be judged by others. So these are all the things that was going in my head when I was getting ready to make my transition. So with help, I realized I really have to get out of my own head and start thinking more with a growth mindset. So there's a book, it's called Life in the Transition. It's by an author named Bruce Feiler, and where he interviewed hundreds of people. And what he realized that on average, people go through 3 to 5 life quakes during their lifetime. And life quakes are considered events. Some are voluntary, some are not voluntary. There are pivotal moments that either shift your paradigm or it takes your life in a different direction. Like Dr. Yamarti might know, sometimes it's sickness, illness. It's the sickness, illness, death of a loved one, which I went through with my dad. Divorces, having children, career change, and retirement. These are probably some of the biggest life quakes in people's lives. So I realized, you know what, for most of the people, especially the younger generation now, the single career path is no longer the key. So for those of you that are hiring, and I had talked to one of the speakers about having flexibility. Many of us are looking for flexibility in our lives, so that's something to think about. I also had to really bust my own myth in my head. So myth number 1, medicine is all I know. Well, that's not really true. As physicians, we probably did pretty well in college. We obviously, survived medical school. As anesthesiologists, we learn the complex concept of human physiology, anatomy. We're awesome with our hands because we know how to put in central lines, A lines, regional blocks. So what can be more difficult than mastering the skills of medicine and being anesthesia? We can learn new skills. So that's definitely a myth I had to throw out of my own head. Myth number 2, I made all the right decisions to get to where I am today. And if I screw up, I'm out of luck. Well, that's also not true either, because all the Freudian slip, all the decision making that I have up till now is because I trusted myself to make those decisions. And that self-trust will carry me forward to the next stages of my life. So that's myth number 2. Myth number 3, if I made a boo-boo, everybody's gonna judge me, and I'm gonna be seen as a failure. Well, then I realized, and that's probably the toughest one for me to realize, that it's just my own imposter syndrome talking. I know years ago, I think we had a talk on imposter syndrome. That was actually the first time I've ever heard of the term. And I looked it up and I was like, wow, that's totally me, right? So I had to admit that mistakes does not mean a failure. The amazing quote is, mistakes are actually portals to discovery. And Sir Richard Branson actually said, do not be embarrassed by your failures. Learn from them and try again. So finally, after 3 years of analysis paralysis, I decided to take the leap of faith. I quit my job, I quit my partnership after almost 20 years, and I became a per diem. I did not have the perfect plan, but I knew if I were to stay status quo, that was not gonna be an option for me. So that's what I did. So I'm about a year and a half. So I left my job on May 4th, May the 4th be with me. And really, to tell you the truth, I have days filled with anxiety and fear of the uncertainty, but I have not regretted my decision at all. I fully expected to have fear and anxiety during this process. But I was also really surprised that even though I'm not fully retired, I'm still working 2, 3 days a week, but I still went through this mental adjustment. It's almost as if I fully retired. And for those of you in the audience that have retired already, maybe you can identify with this. The first year of retirement, it's like eternal bliss. You know, you have no schedule, you can wake up whenever you want, you don't have, anywhere to be, life is great. But almost about a year since the day that I left my job, I start to feel kind of restless, and I start to have this sense of loss. I miss going out to work every day. I miss seeing friends at work. And what's really surprising is I lost my identity as a pediatric anesthesiologist. And that was probably the most unsettling thing for me. And sometimes that desperation and that sense of loss is what drive people to the third stage of their retirement, which is trial and error. I like to call it the messy middle because it's extremely uncomfortable for me, being the control freak that I am. But that's also the time when people try new things. Most people try things that they already know. Some people go on to try new things. This is a time of trial and error, and it takes time. Clarity takes time. So this is a time to learn to sit okay with the uncertainty. And hopefully once you've learned, you've picked up an interest, or you realize what makes you happy and gives you purpose, then you can move on to the last stage of the retirement, which is really reinventing yourself and reimagining your future. And that is where I am today. So when I have days of uncertainty, I go back to my whys. I realized when I first went on this transition, I just wanted to work less. But I realized the free time I had really didn't bring me much happiness, and I wanted to learn a new skill, and that definitely does not mean working less, because learning a new skill will take work and energy. What I realized is my true reason for doing it is really I want to find a new purpose going forward in my life, and then I'm able to find a new career path that would mix the skills that I already have and the experiences I have while learning new skills to create a new path for me. But how do you do that? I know when I first started this process, I was, it's almost like the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. I thought of working for REI. I thought of, starting a dog walking business, and I felt like I had all these options in my life. So what I did was I sat down on a piece of paper. I wrote down all the skills I have, whether it's my anesthesia skills or the leadership skills I learned at work, or any other skills that you might have. On the other side, I wrote down my interests. Well, I love talking to people. I love meeting new people. And I've always loved mentoring other people, because that was the path that I took when I was working on a full-time job. So I listed those things, and I encourage you to do the same, because there's maybe a way you can combine the experiences and the skill you have with some new skills, and maybe you can create a new career path for yourself. Also, be curious. Going out and meet new people with different ideas, because you never know that you might come across somebody who has something interesting, either an interesting hobby or something, and then you can maybe pick up that hobby, that interest as well. And also be out of your comfort zone. When AOCA first asked me to give this talk, I was actually really scared shitless. The last time I gave a talk was about 15 years ago. And I really don't like being in front of other people. And I also actually had to relearn PowerPoint. So I was definitely out of my comfort zone. And look at me now, I'm standing in front of you. and you have the great fortune of death by PowerPoint. So there you go. Get out of your comfort zone. And really to stay engaged, just because you left medicine or you retired, you still have a community of people to support you. And I really encourage you to really venture out of your usual circle of family and friends and just, be with different people that are like-minded like you, and really continue to explore your true self, along the way, and explore your interest and share your authentic self with other people. And like my life coach that always like to end every single session with something positive and encouraging, that's what I'm gonna do with you all. This is the happiness curve. I don't know, some of you might have seen it. This is the happiness curve by average Americans. The way I interpret this curve is you can shift this curve to the left. You have the power to shift this curve to the left regardless of your age. So if you're a young physician who just starting out, I really encourage you to pursue your interest and passion in addition to pursuing your career path of medicine. And maybe you can shift this happiness curve to the left. And for those of us that are mid-career physicians or approaching our retirement, the best is still yet to come. And these are my references. Thank you.
Stay up here. Stay up here. Thank you so much, Dr. Liu. We will now begin our Q&A portion of the lecture. I know it's late, but I hope you guys can still stay a little bit. If you have questions for Dr. Albert Yervati and Grace Liu, we will give you microphones. I do have just a couple questions. I'll start first. So, Dr. Yervati, I went through, not your experience, but being a caregiver for my mom, I noticed how broken medicine was. And I still haven't come up with an answer of how to fix this. And since you experience it, not everybody would be like so attuned, like to know everything that was happening to them like you did. Just what can people do? I think, we as physicians, we should lead this so that, our loved ones, ourselves, they don't come into this broken medicine system. We were like cogs in the wheel almost. So many errors happened with my mom too. And I felt like, just like I was talking to the wall. I couldn't get anything done. And the call bell light would be on the floor in the morning, like everything. And, she wouldn't get her medicine. It was mistakes, big mistakes, wrong medicines, all different things. And no matter how many safeties are in there, this is years later, my mom is no longer here. I still think of that. I think, what could I have done better? Like, it was just, I was trying, but you feel like your hands are tied. And one of the nurses came over to me and said, "Why are you here? Why?" And I'm like, "Why am I here?" I was like, "This is my mom, like, you should go home, and I'm like, "No, I have to stay here." Like, we were around the clock because my mom couldn't speak for herself. She had a massive CVA.
The number one thing is I always want to get out of the hospital fast. I don't want to stay. There's an acronym I came up with, and I tell my students, I call it SAFE. See it, act upon it, follow up, and be engaged. And I tell them that, be respectful of your attending upper residents, but if you see something, don't be afraid. When I was in the military, part of military aviation, it didn't matter if you were a private or a general. If there was something going on in that aircraft, you spoke up. And everybody was required to do something. So I was down in South Texas, down by Big Bend. I was doing a rotation, family medicine, aviation medicine at Fort Hood. And we're out in the field, and I got on a Cobra gunship with the test pilot, and we're flying. And I'm hearing this weird noise. I didn't know what it was. So I brought his attention. So we landed kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we opened up the cowling in the back. There was a screwdriver in there, kind of doing that. Okay. So, of course, that had to stop, but it was life-saving. So I tell the students, don't be afraid, bring it up. Follow. I tell them, get to know your chief medical officer and The most new thing is coming out. I'm a DIO at the university, and institutional requirement for ACGME in the next 2 years or so, there's going to be a requirement that residents are involved in patient safety. It'll be a big citation if the programs can't. So I bring that to your attention. This is brand new coming out. You know, there's dialogue going on, but they're really, really pushing that your residents are involved in some type of patient safety and so forth.
That's
So
great.
I
Yeah.
think it's a responsibility to all of us. I know it's hard to believe that we could still have wrong site surgery. You know, so on that.
Thank you, thank you. And for Dr. Liu, I was just curious. You were so lucky to just come across a life coach, and not all of us have that luck. And then you mentioned online resources. Do you want to elaborate on what resources you found, if you found anything about finding a life coach, or just so all of us can know some of those resources too?
Yeah, so like I said, I met a life coach completely serendipitously because I really didn't know what life coaching was. In fact, when I found out he was a life coach and he told me what he did, the first word out of my mouth was, "I really don't need your help." You know, so that just goes, you know, for physicians, we kind of already in our mind that's your path. So that's actually how I learned. I wasn't seeking a life coach out because I didn't even know what a life coaching was. As far as the online resources, I just Googled physician transitioning out of medicine, and a whole bunch of different websites came up. The one I used in particular, I think, where I learned a lot and had some really good podcasts, was called Doctors Crossing, and it was started by a dermatologist who transitioned out of medicine to become a life coach. But that's just the one that I used. But there are really a lot of different resources out there online.
Thank you both. Does anyone have any questions here? I know we're coming to the end. If anyone has any, you can just raise your hand, and a microphone will be brought to you. It's coming to you.
This really isn't so much a question, but maybe a couple comments and thoughts on the subject. And I think one thing is that when we go into medicine, we look at it as the end of all of everything. This is our whole life. We're going to practice medicine, becomes our identity. And one of the nice things about getting old is you realize it doesn't have to be that way. It's just a step along the path. And you learn that there are many things that go on after you decide to stop practicing medicine. And when you're so focused in medicine during your life, everything's flying by you, and you don't even realize what's out there. It's not until you have the opportunity to slow down and look around that you may find an opportunity to continue to feel fulfilled. Secondly is the importance, I think, of the thought of the financial planning. I know a lot of people just sort of put that aside. It's almost vulgar to think about money. But we don't teach our residents, medical students, or college students, anyone else, how to approach this. And a couple of us who've been on different boards in the past have discussed and thought that it's a good idea that why don't we include this in our residency training? It'll help make decrease anxiety. It'll help people plan better and make better decisions with regards to their career instead of this panic that oftentimes occurs at the end of their career, or someday they realize, geez, I really haven't thought about this at all. What am I going to do? And the last thing is, I'd like to ask Dr. Liu, is how do people get in touch with you for, I'm sure, what you've already regarded as your next career, that being a life coach?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
How do people get in touch with you to use your new career as a life coach? You may not realize it, but you offered a very concise, thoughtful presentation.
So thinking about stepping out of the comfort zone, right? This is actually the first time I've actually made being able to talk out loud. So because of my personal experience with coaching, and I realized how powerful that tool can be, I'm actually thinking about going to coaching, and I actually just got recently certified as a professional life coach. And talk about learning new skills, right? I'm learning how to set up my own website. I'm learning to be more active on social media. So I will be happy to share my email with you, but because it is a really powerful tool. The difference between life coaching and being a therapist is I not have very limited experience with therapists, but they kind of tell you what to do. Life coaching just ask you some really interesting questions, and they give you these aha moments. So you're basically, most of us already have solution in our minds. You know, when I wanted to cut down, I already have thought about the different options of going part-time, but I just couldn't see that as a concrete plan. So my experience with the life coach has really made me, you know, think outside of the box and really voice out what I was thinking, and I was able to carry out those plans.
Well, as a surgeon, I don't like listening to anybody, so I don't think I do very well with a life coach. But what I found is that, you know, it's a transition that takes a bit. Here you are, you get up every day early, hospital, et cetera, and then suddenly now your life like changes. You know, when I had to close my surgical practice, wow, it like totally changed. Then I concentrated more on the academics and so forth and discovered other things. The other thing is, one of our psychologists at the university said, when you have cancer, you need to reinvent yourself so cancer doesn't recognize you. So I became an author. You know, it's an interesting paradigm when you think about that, of what you do, but I appreciate my colleague here sharing this kind of similar experiences. You know, we recently downsized, big house, smaller house, those things. You start kind of looking at things and going, what's really important now? You know, all those things. And, you know, I tell students, they're coming out with $400,000 in debt, you know, out of residency. I said, don't get the big house, the big, you know, take your time and so forth and so on, and build that. So in the future, because you don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, back to the thing, the hardest part is letting go. It's really hard. I mean, because I had developed a surgery, xiphoid resection. I published more than anyone in the world in international surgery. I had patients coming from all over the country for me. Suddenly it stopped. They're still calling the university. And I can't get anyone to do the surgery. But anyway, it's like it's like you gave up something big, you know, that was your whole. I mean, I thought I'd operate till I was 90. You know, I never expected this. But I think you have to then reset your mind and understand what can you do to give back. And certainly being at the university with students and so forth, I feel like I'm continuing to do that. The best thing I've ever had is I've had some of my former residents call me and say, you know, our trauma surgeon, they go, you know that thing you taught me about how to control the pulmonary artery for hemorrhage? He goes, I had this guy, I did that. He went home in 3 days and survived. It's like, what a great feeling to know that you transferred that knowledge to somebody else. So we all have experiences that we can give back. And I think give back to the profession, give back to your anesthesia college, give back to the comms. There's a lot of medical schools now opening up, a lot of osteopathic schools that are looking for mentors and people. Sure. But yeah, it's not easy. I can tell you, it is not easy, you know, suddenly giving up and changing your life, you know. But, you know, I still get up at 4:45 in the morning. I get to the university at 6 in the morning. Nobody's around. I can't help it. I'm awake, getting stuff done. Then I try and get home by noon or 1 because of my wife. With her stroke now, she's getting more dementia and so forth. And so I really feel I've got a caregiver. I need to be there, you know, with her because it's been a real challenge and a change. And again, these are things I never, ever anticipated would happen. You know, I never thought I'd get cancer. Like, come on, you know. And the interesting thing is, when I'm at the cancer center, I see many patients I've operated on and so forth that see me, you know, and thanking me. And yeah, the other day I was at the gun range and this guy came up to me, he goes, Dr. Vada, remember me? I go, yeah. He goes, I had that bad infection in my lung. He goes, you see what you did? He goes, you saved me. And everybody there, they're like looking at, you know, what a great feeling to know that you've done something good. But again, it's hard, but sometimes you just got to do it.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And even when you have the best intention, you know, I had the intention of finishing on my career, you know, and sometimes, you know, life quakes are involuntary. Sometimes you volunteer to do something. But I would say, you know, if I could, you know, see my younger self like 20 years ago, be like, explore.
So let me ask you, are you happy now?
I am so happy.
Yeah.
And you know, to tell you the truth, I really seriously feel like now that I have the flexibility of making my own schedule, I work when I want to. Obviously, I'm taking a financial hit, but you know, there's enough. I mean, sometimes looking at your budget, maybe you can make modifications on where you spend money, but having that flexibility really makes all the difference in the world. And I almost found like I found this joy of anesthesia back. So.
Thank you. Do we have a last question? I think. Thank you everyone for your questions, and I think we're at time, and we'll need to conclude this session then. So please join me in thanking Drs. Albert Yervati and Grace Liu. You will be asked to provide feedback on the session when completing the attestation form at the end of the convention. And then now, since we have reached the end of the AOCA 2024 Annual Convention and Conclave, thank you all for joining us, and we hope you all enjoyed the program here. As a reminder, in order to claim your CME credits, you must complete the online attestation form in its entirety. You can find the link to the attestation form at the registration desk or in your conference materials. Also, thank you to all who contributed to the Tim Ernst Fund. Our grand total is $37.97, and that's not including Dr. Escher's $1,000 match. So thank you all so much for that. And also, please be sure to save the date for our 2025 mid-year seminar. It's March 21st to 23rd in Austin, Texas, and registration will open in mid-October. Also save the date. As you know, AOCA's 2025 Annual Convention and Conclave is September 6th through 9th in Savannah, Georgia. Thank you all for being here, and we hope to see you next year in 2025.